Right then, so those that have been eagerly awaiting Solo, a Star Wars story, will be somewhat pleased and somewhat displeased with the first reviews and reactions. And I always say take everything like this with a pinch of salt, but these are not universally positive. So, I mean, you could probably take these and, if you like these particular reviewers that you've seen before, you could probably take it as that is, what they actually truly believe. And I've said before, movie reviewers in general, when they go to these early screenings, they do have an incentive to give it as positive as possible. So they could actually be hyping this up more than it even is, and are actually being quite negative. So it's not what you'd expect, because I was expecting it to be released and people to say that it was universally positive. But hey, we'll get right into it. So Molly Freeman from Screen Rant rates it as follows. Ultimately, Solo, a Star Wars story, delivers on what was promised, an entertaining enough origin story for Han Solo that explains how he became the smuggler introduced in A New Hope. Beyond that, the movie takes very few risks and offers very few surprises, though, arguably, casting someone new in a role as iconic as Han Solo and attempting to deliver a prequel film that pleases fans both new and old is risky enough. Meg Downey from CBR stated the following: the twangy Western gunslinger vibe conveyed by the trailers is basically completely absent. There are some elements of a heist story tossed in and about 5 minutes of a genuine mud and trenches war movie, but otherwise the story is a highlight reel of the same storytelling styles and genre conventions Star Wars has been simmering in for the last 40 some odd years. The fact is, Solo, a Star Wars story, isn't really concerned in making a lot of sense to people who aren't already bought and sold for the Star Wars mythos as they walk in the door. Matt Goldberg from Collider rated it apparently a C, and he stated the following: Solo is technically a Star Wars movie, but it's one that has set pieces in place of a personality. It's a film whose base level is fine, despite some unique cinematography from Bradford Young. Ron Howard's direction is staid, solid, and completely without personality, which is a problem when your movie is the story of a young rogue like Han Solo. Solo doesn't do anything particularly wrong, but it doesn't do much right either. And from the Raps, Alonso Gerald stated, Solo is less a movie than it's that page in Highlights magazine that makes you feel good for finding the chair and the bicycle in the hidden picture. As an intergalactic adventure, it's mostly adequate, with some very successful elements, but if you strip the Star Wars names and places and put it into the world as a freestanding sci-fi action movie, it's doubtful that it would spawn much excitement, let alone sequels. And from Variety's Andrew Barker, the most important thing to note about Solo, a Star Wars story, is that in spite of its widely publicised behind-the-scenes turmoil, the film is not the disaster its production history might suggest. In fact, it's not even close. Though burdened with a slow start and enough thirsty fan service to power Comic-Con's Hall H for a decade, it has a kicky, kinetic heist movie at its heart, and its action sequences are machine-tooled spectacles of the First Order. And from Mashable's Angie Han, your mileage may vary, but it took this reviewer about 7 minutes to decide she was fully on board with this version of Han, which is fortunate because Solo really only works if you care a whole lot about Han. For once, this is a Star Wars movie that's more interested in the small picture than the big one. Solo is the most intimate, ground-level Star Wars movie we've ever gotten, and the visuals are correspondingly gritty and grim. Michael Reckstaffen from The Hollywood Reporter, despite the intermittent lags, the production proves to be more than a salvage operation thanks mainly to the engagingly choreographed performances, led by an irresistibly charismatic title turn from Alden Ehrenreich, who ultimately claims Solo as his own, even if he doesn't entirely manage to convince us he's Harrison Ford. Although the end result will unlikely find itself occupying an upper berth in the Star Wars movie pantheon, there's enough here to satisfy the fan base and give Disney a very strong turnout. And from the Washington Post and Hornaday, written by The Empire Strikes Back's Lawrence Kasdan, along with his son, Jonathan, Solo has been conceived as a space western with all the overcomplicated, but also childishly simple, heists and double crosses the genre entails. but it never works up an authentic sense of risk or excitement or novelty, with the exception of one or two lines that anticipate the title character's future adventures. The proceedings have the perfunctory air of biting into the aforementioned apple and taking tasteful, unobjectionable nibbles. So, there you have it. It's interesting, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't really expecting an awful lot from this movie, but I will say this, that if the reviewers are only being semi-positive about this film, it actually doesn't bode well at all. We all know, because we've seen it time and time again, that reviewers that have attended, and especially Disney screenings, and that they always hype up movies. They always do. And it's always the same. It's an undeniable fact that it, like I said, it's just been seen time and time again that these reviewers do this. If they are only able to hype it up this much, I really don't hold out much hope for this film. Of course, like anyone, a reviewer has their own opinion, but generally speaking, people gravitate towards reviewers who share the same opinion as them, or they introduce new movies and such. So if these reviewers are people which you like, and they're only able to give it a very lukewarm reception, a very tepid reception, I highly doubt that this is going to be a good film. And it's a real shame that people have actually very, very specifically pinpointed Ron Howard's direction. He is from the old breed of directors, so that might be one of the reasons. It's also the fact that this film has gone through massive amounts of issues, from the initial directors having to be fired, from the fact that apparently Alden Ehrenreich basically can't act and he couldn't improv, therefore he's not very funny at all. It's interesting. It is very, very interesting. It's also interesting that Meg Downey from CBR specifically stated that actually everything that was conveyed in the trailers is not in the film in terms of the tone, when she said that the twangy Western gunslinger vibe. So if you're going into this, and this is pretty much universally stated from everyone in these reviews, if you're going into this expecting the same tone as the trailers, you're not going to get it. Which is a shame, because frankly that's false advertisement, and Disney should know better by now. Disney, generally speaking, with a lot of their films, have been quite good at not falling into that trap. Certainly not the same trap which the likes of 20th Century Fox have fallen into time and time again with, say, Fantastic and that nightmare of a film. It's a shame, but I will say this: what were you expecting from this film? There were so many pieces of news that were coming out from behind the scenes, even down to the likes of Woody Harrelson apparently throwing hissy fits that he wasn't getting prunes on set. Nonsense like that was dropping about this movie. So I will say this: if you're going into it expecting a lot, gauge your expectations accordingly. It doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly great film. It does get released next week, well, in the UK at the very least anyway. So will you be going to see this? What do you think of these reviews? Like I say, take it all with a pinch of salt, but reviewers, generally speaking, are incentivized to give it a more positive reception. And if they can only give it this very, very mildly middling positivity, then it's probably not boding well at all. So let me know all your thoughts. Are you going to go and see this? Are you even looking forward to this? Were you looking forward to this? And I will say this as well: they hid this film for a really, really long time, and it seems like we now know why. I will just say it. I'll say it straight off the bat. This is very reminiscent to The Predator, and I think that unfortunately it's probably going to be the same kind of issues there as well. So guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. As always, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Stay up to date on all movie and pop culture news. I've been Mr. H, and I will catch you in the next video.